Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Extreme Improv podcast. And this is another Chat Show episode. I am joined today by Anthony Francis, all the way from Florida in the United States. How are you doing, Anthony?
I'm doing well, David. Thanks for having me.
Oh, good. We're doing good, but you suddenly sounded a lot louder in my ears than you did a moment ago.
Oh, no.
Yep.
How's that?
That sounds better. That sounds better.
All right. Oh.
So yeah, that's all good. So you sound nice and loud and and bright. That was quite a hello I got there. So apologies to anyone listening who you burst into their ears onto the scene. So that is quite an entrance.
I like to make a big first impression. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, Anthony, you are an improviser. That is correct.
Yes.
Will you just introduce yourself a little bit with what companies you work with, where you do improv, and a little bit of your history?
Sure. I'll try to be brief. When I'm not blowing out people's eardrums, I'm an improviser here in Delray Beach in South Florida. So I perform in really anywhere from Miami to West Palm Beach up to anywhere else. I try to drive as much as I can and go and visit as many other theaters as I can, like in Orlando, places like that. But I'm an improviser. I do long form improv, short form improv, and I also do musical improv.
Cool.
Yeah, I do a. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
I do a solo musical improv mini Harold. So wow. I have my music director, and I play all the characters. And I was inspired to do that by TJ Mannix, who runs improv theater, or he's a teacher and a performer at the Magnet Theater in New York. I got the pleasure to get to work with him and watch his shows, and it was very inspiring. And I ran an improv theater here for 2 years called the-improv-u. I still run improv-u as a training center, although we don't put on our own shows anymore. And that's pretty much it. I started in 2012.
Yeah.
I was 29 years old when I started, and I'm 25 now. I started when I was 29, 37, and I took to improv really quickly, which was different for me. I really enjoyed it, and then quickly started teaching level 1 students, and then I taught all the levels, and then I started doing drop-in classes, which is really how I got started as improv-u. I did a $10 2-hour drop-in class. It started with a handful of people. I didn't know how many people would come a night. I rented a room in a community center, and then after like 5 or 6 classes of like 1 or 3 people, one night we had like 10 people, 15 people, 20 people, and I had 33 people show up one night for my drop-in class, little tiny room. It was the beginning of something I had no idea would be the greatest adventure of my life. And, as things have changed over the last, 6 years of having improv-u, we're still in a great place. It's evolved because I believe that the improv business model, I guess, if you want to call it that, is changing, and I'm trying to change along with it to keep it fun, keep it light.
Now that's interesting. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. There's so many things that I want to pick up on there, but okay, let's pick up straight on that. Just in what way do you see it changing? From what to what?
So when I left my first improv group, I left with I wanted more, right? But one of the things I didn't like was this: improvisers don't get paid. And I was adamant. I go, you know what? There's money to be made here. I've seen how much money comes in from a show. Why aren't these improvisers getting paid? All improvisers should get paid. And when I run my theater, I'm paying everybody, right? It doesn't unfortunately work that way. The margins are razor thin when you have to pay the rent on a theater space, on an actual physical location, not to mention all the other issues that come with it. So when I say that the improv theater that you have in your hometown It's fragile. I mean, it's super fragile in my understanding. And I don't know, maybe other theaters might say, no, it's not true. But everyone I've ever spoken to in my own experience was the theater itself, to maintain a space for us, is so hard to do that it's not that I wouldn't want to pay a team of 8 people to come out and perform, but it's just hard to do. It's really hard to do that when you have to average in all the other things. And the classes and the shows aren't where the money flows in when it comes to an improv theater. You know, the real money that came in for us was through beer and wine, you know?
Absolutely.
Which is not what I wanted to do ever. So, you know, I'm not in the, you know, when you run a theater, you're in the food and beverage business.
That is so true.
Yeah, and that's just not where I want to be. And that's something I said, you know, what are we doing? I wanted to create a space for the improv community, the local community, but I just don't, and we did. And for 2 years we did, and it was great. And I'm really happy. And in fact, the theater space that we created, we built it out of an old diner from the 50s.
Amazing.
It was really cool. It used to be Mr. Kemp's Diner. And it's in what's called the Western Settlement, which is a historic district in Delray Beach. And Delray Beach is a very old city. And we built it there. And now that we moved out, another improv group has moved in, and they're opening it as a theater, and they're going to keep it going. And I'm happy about that, because that space still gets to be used as a space for improvisers. But yeah, when I say that, that's the idea of having your own theater is hard for the improv community. I think we need to maybe get away from that model and try to do more pop-up shows, or, you know, train, practice, and then do a run for like 3 months where you perform like crazy. And then you go back to training and practicing and doing the community events, doing the things you do for each other, doing mixers, getting together with different students and playing. But when it comes to the audience, to the general population, I feel like it's difficult to do. And it might just be my market, but that's kind of what I've experienced.
Yeah, I would say, because obviously I'm in the United Kingdom, and I would say that sounds fairly accurate across here as well. It's so I could connect with so many of the things you said just from my experience, and I've never actually run an actual building. I've never run a theatre. I run a theatre company. I've been involved in festivals and events, and the thing you are absolutely right on is, more often than not, the money comes in from the bar, and
right.
It's incredibly difficult. And this is something people who perhaps don't produce theatre of any description, scripted, musical, improv, or otherwise, understand, is that you could think that, well, an improv show, it's easy to organise, it doesn't take lots of rehearsal, you don't need props and sets and all that. But it's still an expensive business when you factor in advertising costs and like renting rehearsal spaces and renting theatres and everything else that goes into it. That we've done shows where once we've rented the building, we'll get a deal where the building will insist that we run an interval so that they can sell drinks, and they get all of the money. And we'll end up with very little at the end of the day. And it's just a very, very tough business, really.
Absolutely. You know, what I've found as well. So now without a theater, I go, okay, now that I've done that side, what does a theater owner want to hear from me? Here's what they want to hear. They want to hear that. They want to hear someone say, I will pay for the venue. Mm-hmm. I will front the money. And then I will use my skills in marketing, advertising, and the ability to put on a great show to recoup my money and make more. And that's the way it has to be. It's rare that you'll be able to do a 50-50 split with the theater. It's what I used to do with my theater, and people used to come and do shows with me. I would just do a 50-50 split with them. So I was taking a huge risk. I'm out of business now, so that should tell you something. I mean, you know, the Improv-u is still alive. If you went to, we have a website, the-improv-u.com, where, you know, we're still teaching classes, so we're still alive, we're still around.
Yeah,
when it comes to running shows like that. We also run and host the Palm Beach Improv Festival, which is going into its 4th year, and that's a huge success every year. And we always make that affordable. My mission for improv-u was always to make it affordable. The problem is when you run a theater, you have to make those prices high because you have to make sure you've got enough money coming in that you can keep this thing going. So for me, that's where the mission and the business started to butt heads. So our whole goal is I always, like I said, I did a $10 drop-in class, and I still do it every Monday night for 2 hours at $10 because I want who's good at this or who wants to do it, because there's a million people out there. There's teachers and there's dishwashers and there's people who don't make a lot of money, or students. And, just because you're a student doesn't mean you have parents that have an unlimited amount of income, So there's students that would probably be great at this, who are probably the next future so-and-so, but we won't know because they won't get that opportunity because of the payment leap they have to make. So I said, I'd rather lose the theater and keep the prices than raise the prices on people, because at $250, $275 for an 8-week class, I feel you only get a certain type of individual.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's the situation where if you always have to raise prices, there's so many people, you'll get more money per person, but you'll probably have less people.
Exactly. And I want, for our community, it's more about raising the community up, because the more people you bring in, the stronger the community is going to be. So for me, it was always about building community. When we started, there was no improv in Delray. There just didn't exist. And there's a lot of places it doesn't exist. Fort Lauderdale, for example, lives between, if you're not familiar, there's Miami, and then above it is Fort Lauderdale, and then above that is Delray Beach. So in Fort Lauderdale, there's almost no improv presence, which makes no sense because there's so much in Miami and there's so much in the West Palm Beach area, but you don't have anything in Fort Lauderdale because you don't have a champion. You don't have anyone down there who's willing to put the time in to build that community. And you need those champions. There's like 5 people in South Florida that make all of improv in South Florida happen.
Wow. Yeah, okay, so something I'd like to pick up on is you said about, so you now do a festival and you've done it for 4 years and it's been successful. Do you find then that if you put on a festival, then rather than trying to run a theatre and have constant shows, that you can have this one big event each year, which kind of brings everyone in, gives someone something to look forward to, and it can make one bigger thing a success rather than trying to have something constantly going, like you were saying?
Yes, because I think 2 things. And one is, I don't think that the general population I don't think improv is for everyone, in the sense of I don't think everyone gets into it, and which is a good thing. I love improv because it's incorruptible. You can't really put it on television. I mean, Whose Line did it, but like you can't put long form improv on television. You can't commercialize it. You really can't. I don't think you can, and I don't think I want that. I wouldn't want improv to become a mainstream thing. So I don't necessarily think it is. When we do improv for the mainstream, it's usually short form. And that's because it's easily but the best parts of improv are like long form musical improv, the silent, slow, patient improv, the TJ and Dave improv. That for me is what improv is, where it's been the best. And a general population that's looking to, the public that's looking to go out and have a good time that night, it's not for everybody. So on the one hand, that's why I say a festival is great, because it allows all the improvisers who have been working in the dark, who have been, in basements and in little walk-in closets, in these little spaces where they get to practice or and rehearse, and they get that one show a month, right? But they're good. They're real good. But they don't get to be seen by a lot of people because they're in a small town in the middle of wherever they live. And now there's a festival and they got accepted to the festival. They come out to the festival. Now they're in a room full of people that know the work and love the work. And these people have been working hard in the dark. And now they get to show off what they've been working on. It is the best experience. I think.
Yes,
I think a
that's
fest.
really
So
good.
if I had to
Yeah,
pick
go for
one,
it.
a festival is it. Festivals. If we had to get rid of one thing, I'd say lose the theaters, keep the festivals.
The festivals are incredibly positive because, like you say, you get the people that turn out to the festivals, audience wise or participant wise, and they understand the art form, they understand the medium, and also if like I don't disagree with what you're saying there really at all, in this much that there are so many festivals. I've been to a couple of festivals in the United States now, and I've been to
Hmm.
festivals elsewhere, and just that you bring people from across, like in the United States, you bring people from across the country or bring people internationally in, you're getting to see new ideas and meet people. And even though there's a lot of different groups, it's still a quite small community. So it just brings the community together when you have a festival.
Yeah. Well, we are such a small community. There's really not that many of us. And I mean, with Chicago and New York, obviously, there's a lot of improvisers there, but um, we're all doing this separately. There's no leadership. There's no, I mean, yeah, there's lots of books out there, but there's different philosophies, and and so the festival, I think, is a great way for all of us to get together and say, hey, we're not alone. We've all been working together separately. We're all working on this thing together, and now we're together, and we get to see it. We get to see what you're doing and your take on it, and I love everyone's different approach to improv. I haven't seen any improv in the UK. I don't know what. I would love to watch that. I'm also fascinated to see. Like, one of the things for me is I'd love to do improv or coach a group of people from Japan, because I've got some
Yeah.
friends that live over there, and they're the um I don't know what it is, but like the socioeconomic not socioeconomic. What am I saying? I don't know words. I'm trying to sound smart. I don't know what I'm saying.
Don't
The
worry.
the way that people are when they're, the society. That's the word.
Yeah.
Society, right? Like, what is their society like? It's different from ours. They're
Have
more
you
about
ever
the
been to
group.
Japan?
I haven't. I have friends who are trying to get me to go. I'm working on it.
I've been to Japan once a couple of years ago, and it was
Okay.
the favorite place I've ever traveled to. I performed at the Tokyo Comedy Store, and the the people in the audience, everyone could understand English to a degree, and there were
Yeah.
people who were English, Australian, American in the audience as well, who were just gathering to the show to uh, be amongst people that wanted comedy and um, who could all like understand the language. And so there was like a slight issue of like language where not everything would translate, but there's such a welcoming community. I loved my time in Japan. And
Cool.
what I find is interesting when you like using Japan as the example, but when I've been to different countries, is that is as similar as things may be between what we're used to for me in England and perhaps what things are like in America. You get all these little nuances of different things where there's slightly different values, different worldly experiences, different aspects to the culture, which means that certain things which you think absolutely would work for you in your market in your area with their knowledge base and life experiences is slightly different, and some of them can be quite surprising.
Right. Right. Yeah. Like, they value more of the group as opposed to the individual, which I would love. I don't know. I can't comment on it because I haven't seen it. I would love to, like I was just saying to my friends, I'd love to work with a group of Japanese performers and just see what they do so that I could kind of just see where they're coming from, with improv. Because I find, when I watch people do improv, I feel like I get such a good idea of like where they're at subconsciously. It all kind of
Yes.
comes out when they perform. So it's like, I just love to see that. That's great though, that you get to do that.
Yeah, it's been interesting just to go to different places. I did a festival in Denmark in Copenhagen a couple of years ago also. And what was so
Nice.
interesting out there is, as is so common with improv festivals in Europe and all over the world, is whichever country it's in, they'll usually be primarily performing in English. But when I was at the Copenhagen, just to give it the shout out, it's the Copenhagen International Improv Festival, and they've got it coming up again in a few weeks' time. And unfortunately, my head clashes, so I couldn't put myself forward for it. But everyone was performing in English, but there was people there from Denmark, there was people there from France, from Germany, from the United States, from England, and many other countries, Sweden, Switzerland, and so on and so forth. And the thing that I quickly became aware of is that even though everyone's performing in English, not everyone's got the same understanding and the same nuance of the language. So as soon as I was going to be performing, I felt the more physical theatre I can include, and I don't mean necessarily strictly physical theatre, but the more physical performance, the more my expressions become important. Whereas in England, often it can come down to wordplay. It can come down to ideas and like cultural references. But physicality is universal.
That's great. Yeah, I totally agree. I always tell my students it's 90% what we, how we're emoting and how we're moving and how we're doing things and what we're showing. What we're showing is more important than what we're saying. The words are a very small part of it. So, that's great. I like the idea of doing improv. I've had the rare pleasure of doing improv with people that can't speak English at all, or, but it's great because it's like, well, we do have something in common, almost like musicians. We have a language that we can speak in with improv, and we could do silent scenes, and those communicate so much. There's so much in a silent scene. So we don't need the language to make that happen. Yeah. It's hard to get out of Florida and go to, you've got what is it? Just a train ride, and you're off to,
like
country.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We could in the United Kingdom, we could spend about 4 or 5 hours, and we could go from one end of the country to the other. Whereas, obviously, that's just crossing a state for you, isn't it?
Yeah, well, Florida's really big. Florida's what is it? I want to say a 4-hour drive to get out.
Yeah. I did
get out of that state.
So last year I was lucky to be able to perform in the Central Florida Improv Festival, which was that was very cool. I think at the ME Theatre. I forget even what the ME stands for now, which is really bad. But whilst we were in Florida, we drove from we first went to Miami, so not far from you.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just so that we could go to Miami Beach. Basically, we're in Florida, so you gotta go. It's like we were there, and it was early March, and the weather was absolutely beautiful. So, I'm very jealous of your weather. But we ended up going to the Everglades, Key Largo. So we did try to really explore it before doing the festival, and inevitably we visited some of the theme parks as well. But incredible time there.
Oh, awesome! Yeah,
and in that sense, I don't blame you if you don't leave Florida much. Like I wouldn't ever want to.
Oh, what I wouldn't give for some just dreary, gray, rainy days. You know what you guys have that we don't have? Fashion. I don't get fashion down here, and I'm a big guy. I don't wear layers well. I do wear layers well. I'd like to wear layers, but without it, the only accessory we have down here is, arm muscles. And for some of us, it's hard to do. It's hard to get the arm muscles going. So,
See, and that in itself is a really interesting local cultural difference compared to in the UK. So
there's so much skin down here. And it's like, oh, man, can I just please cover up? Can I wear a pea coat and 3 button-down shirts underneath it? That'd be great.
Yeah,
that's my build. I'd look great in a coat, but I don't get that.
Okay, Anthony, I want to ask you. So, you started doing improv. I think you said 2012.
Yes.
What was your background before that? Were you involved in performing at all? And where did you discover it from?
No, I was in video production. I went into video production because I was terrified to be an actor. I never got to do it in high school. I got into sales right out of high school. And I made some money in, working. I worked in the financial industry for I did investment mortgages for people. And I made some money from that. And I said, what do I really want to do with my life? And what I really wanted to be was an actor, but I was too scared to say that. So I decided to go into video production. I did that. And when I came out, I started doing video. And then I had a client in 2000. Oh, yeah. I want to say, yeah, was it 2010? Yeah, 2011. It was almost 2012. It was right around that time. I had a client who was like, hey, we need voiceover for some of these commercials. So I said, I'll do it. So I did some voiceover for the commercials. And, speech and diction was one of the things I really enjoyed when I was going to school. So I really liked the speaking correctly, understanding that there were certain things I was saying that weren't transatlantic, not transatlantic, but the general American accent. Yes. I was kind of fascinated by the general American accent. I worked in news, so I was always fascinated by that accent with the newscasters. So I started doing voiceover work, and then I wanted to do more voiceover work, but I wanted to do it because it was me getting to hide behind a microphone, and all still excuses for what I really wanted to do. A friend of mine said, hey, why don't you voice people's comments on Reddit? That was his advice. He goes, go on reddit.com. He goes, voice people's comments and leave it underneath their comment. If people like your voice, they'll tell you. If they don't, they'll tell you. And I was a big fan of that. I said, you know what? I want the honest truth about where I'm at with this. So I did that, and I got inundated with messages from people saying, your voice is amazing. You've got a great voice. This is great. Oh my God, this is amazing. Thank you so much. What an amazing voice. I was not prepared for that. And it took a lot of confidence building for me. I did not have the confidence. So from there, I took an acting class because acting classes help with your voice acting. Still thinking voice acting. I'm still a voice actor. I actually voice audiobooks. I just have one. I have one that's coming out soon about blogging for profit, and then I have another one I did on RVs. So there's a couple other, and some other ones I won't mention on here, but whatever. There's a couple of audiobooks out there. So I went and took an acting class down in Fort Lauderdale with Michael Joya, the acting school of South Florida. And then he said, hey, I have an improv class. I was like, I'm clever. I'm funny. I'll take an improv class. So knowing now that being clever and being funny have nothing to do with improv. But at the time, that was what I said. I took the improv class and I was hooked. And it was just simple. It was simple short form games, but I was just absolutely hooked on what I was learning and what I was able to do through improv. So improv, I tell people improv changed me on a molecular level. That's how it started.
Wow.
I just was hooked after that. I became a completely different person. I don't want to say a different person, but the person I was inside finally got to come out.
And that's a really that's a common story that you do hear amongst people that really do improv, that perhaps before they got into doing improv, they might have been shy, they might have been nervous, lacking confidence, and it brings something out of them. It gives them permission to be themselves, really.
Yeah, and that's when you say it gives them permission. I say that to my students. I say, if you're waiting for someone to tell you that you have permission, then I'll tell you now, you have permission. Yeah. Because that's what's stopping everybody, is they don't think they have permission. Who am I? Who is Anthony to be an actor? So many other people out there better at it than I could ever be. Why should I even do that? It's such a kid's dream. Why should I do that silly thing? Well, I'm good at it. I should do it. I should have given myself permission a long time ago to do it. And I'm not ashamed to say I'm good at it and I should do it, because there's people out there that have told me that they loved my show. They were, they had a great time. That's important to me. And my mission in life is if I can make people forget about their troubles for a little bit, that's it. That's my whole.
That's a great mission.
That's it. That's it. Because I've been a class clown my whole life. My whole dream is just to make people laugh. So if I can make people laugh without getting in trouble, then that'll be good for me. You know.
Yeah, yeah, I very much agree. Like for myself personally, I love to make people feel happy. I think that there's lots of things to worry about in the world, but like just acting, comedy, improv, things like this, it's it's relaxing, it's escapism, it's positive, it's enjoyable. It's got so many positive attributes to it.
Let me ask you a question. You find improv relaxing?
I do. Now there is an aspect to it where I can say that it gives you the adrenaline or whatever, but I perhaps relaxing isn't the most appropriate word, but I find it comfortable. I find
Well,
it that I
no.
feel at ease
How do you feel in an improv scene?
in an improv scene. Well, comfortable is a great word. I feel excited and I feel engaged. I feel genuinely more alive than what I do at other times. I feel more alert and more um, like just a overwhelming positive feeling, really.
Nice. Yeah, that's how I feel. I feel people say like improv is it can be uh stressful. I was like, just sit in it. Just relax in it like a jacuzzi. Like it feels good to be in the scene, whatever it is. Like just I don't know. It feels like I slide into a groove and I'm just in it.
Yeah, yeah.
When you said
When
that, I was
I
like,
when
yeah.
I yeah when I teach and direct people, one of the first principles I try to put over that is that I'd say that pretty much there are, I wouldn't say there are things that you can do wrong. There are choices you can make. Some will be more successful and some will be less successful, depending on how you gauge your own successes and failures, I suppose, in things.
Hmm.
But there's not really anything you can do wrong. The only thing I'll say to people, which I'd say, um, ideally, I'd say you don't want to do, which I would call a mistake, is when people go up there and they if they express that they don't know what they're doing, that oh sorry I didn't hear that, or oh I don't quite understand what to do, oh sorry, they feel awkward. And if you're performing in front of an audience, if you um, demonstrate awkwardness, that oh I don't know what to do, or oh that went wrong, or that was a mistake, oh I shouldn't be here, then the audience will feel awkward, which will in turn make you feel more awkward. So the principle I put over to people is whatever you're going to do something, and if it's spot on, if it's accurate, if it's what you think is good, then great. If it's something which is slightly wrong or the references don't make sense or whatever, then great. People love to see actors struggle. People love to see how people overcome problems. People, they're rooting for you in the audience. People don't go to a show to see you struggle. They go there to uh, want you to do well. And so it's so
Hmm.
freeing for an actor on stage to think any of my mistakes are actually going to be my strength.
Absolutely. Yeah. We say something similar. There's weak choices and strong choices.
Yeah.
Like and whatever choice you make it, own it, because you got to own it for what? 2 minutes, 3 minutes?
Yes,
That's the
exactly.
longest you're gonna have to own a decision like that or a choice you make. A solo improv, if you haven't done it, for me, solo improv really forced me to face my inner editor, to face that doubting voice, because I had no one there to back up my choices except me. So every choice I made, I had to be okay with, I had to be good with and roll with and and not get in my head. I found solo improv to be the most challenging because I always have a team of people. When you're doing improv with, so even if you're just doing a two-person thing, you've always got another person there who's backing up any move,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
silly
Okay,
move you
so
make.
this is interesting to me because I've seen a fair amount of solo improv, but I myself have never actually done it.
Mhm.
What would you say, just for any of the listeners out there, if they haven't done it, what would you say are the challenges of it? What would you say are what are the freedoms of it, and what drew you to it?
Uh, okay. Well, I would say that the challenges of it are making choices and being comfortable with the choices you make. There's no one else on stage with you, so you have to make the decision. If you make the decision to play a different character, bring a new character in to the scene that you think will work, you just have to make that choice. If you decide to speak with a certain accent or affectation or something, and you're thinking in your head, oh, this is stupid, you got to let that go, because you just got to move on. You can't. This is just what you're doing. So that's probably the most challenging thing. The most let me see if I can remember. The most freeing?
The most freeing, or what are the benefits or plus points compared to other forms of improv? What does it allow you to? Yeah.
So no, that's okay. What it allows me to do. So it's weird. I love my solo show. It doesn't mean I don't want to, but I really enjoy playing with other people too. But I would say I'm happy to do my solo show because I usually have a music director with me. But sometimes I don't. Sometimes I do the show without music, which means I am completely by myself. And those shows are great. I'm totally fine with those. The thing that I love about it is when it starts, first of all, I get to show the audience. I get to be as, I don't know. I'm sure all human beings are this way, but I feel like I hide a lot of myself, whether it's because I'm shy or I'm just trying to be polite and I don't want to talk about myself all the time. I'm a very loquacious person, so I try to tone it down a little bit. I don't want to disrupt people or, annoy people. So when I get to do solo improv, I get to share with the audience my inner workings, there's no one else there. All these ideas, all these characters, all these situations, they're all coming from me. So when the audience gets to watch that, I feel like I'm letting them in my brain and I'm letting them into the most intimate parts of myself. And that's what I love about it, because I go, you know what, I don't have to explain myself. I had a friend who'd never seen me do improv before watch my solo show. And I was like, oh, I don't have to explain anything to you now, because you get who I am. I've explained who I am through my work. You get who I am. You get where my brain goes. You understand how I operate. I feel like I share that with people more. The way I got into it was, I watched. Okay, so the first time I ever saw a solo improv show, I watched Richard Paul, who is a member of Four First Names. It's Chris Barry and Richard Paul. And Richard Paul did a 45-minute solo improv set. And I just had my mouth open the entire time. I was like, I didn't know we could do this. That was 4 years. I want to say 3 years ago. That was 3 years ago. The next year, I saw TJ Mannix. We brought TJ down. TJ contacted me when we did the Palm Beach Improv Festival. He goes, hey, I used to live in Boca, and Boca and Delray are right next to each other. And he goes, I used to live in Boca. I'd love to come down. So he came down. We brought him down. He did some workshops and a show. He also performed at the festival. He does a one-man musical show. And I was like, oh my God. And I got to meet his music director. And musical improv for me was I would say it's kind of the reason I started improv-u. I wanted more musical improv, and there was nowhere else to get it. And I was like, if no one's going to give it to me, I got to make it myself.
Yeah, very true.
And that's everything in life. If no one's going to give it to you, you got to make it yourself. And so that's really where it came from. TJ Mannix. Then I took a workshop with TJ on solo improv. I was lucky enough to take a workshop with Jill Bernard and do some solo improv. That was really helpful. Jill Bernard's workshop was really helpful for me. I've met
Jill, actually. Sorry, just to interject there. I've met Jill. I didn't do a workshop, but I was at the Alaska State Improv Festival last year, and I did see her. She had a one-woman improvised musical or improvised play with songs in it that she did. I'm trying to remember the name. Drum Machine, I think was the name of it. And
I think
that
so.
was, yeah, that was an incredible one person show. That was a one person musical where she played all of these characters, and it was very impressive. So
The
yeah.
patience that she has, and the patience that she taught us, uh, and the advice I have for anyone who wants to do solo improv is sit down, play a character, pick an emotion, pick a physicality, then see what words come out of your mouth. Figure out who this character is. And then, as you're talking as this character, think of what other character might be in the room with this person. You just calmly stand up, walk over to where that person is in your mind, and start to be that person. And then, if those two people want to say something to each other, you can turn to that other character and speak to them. And then you can either go and answer for them, or you can get the answer from them. You know what I mean? It's almost like
Yeah, yeah,
you're lighting
absolutely.
up, you're just lighting up different parts of your imagination. You're laying your imagination out on the stage, and then your body is physically entering the certain areas you want the audience to see, while the rest of it continues around you. You know, you can say in your mind, in my mind, when I do it, I go, all right, this character is running from somebody, you know, so we'll see them running. And then it's like, okay, well, let's see what the person who's chasing them looks like. And then we see what they look like. Um,
So
you know, yeah,
what tips would you say to someone who perhaps who hasn't seen this or wants to do this in terms of how do you, because like you say, you've got to be your own editor, you've got to be your own director here. How do you make it so that the audience, if they are not used to seeing solo improv, can see the distinction of when you transition from one character to the next? Say it is this chase sequence, and you go from one person running, and then you go to the next character who's also running. They may be in a different position on the stage, but is it
sure.
just the position, or how do you show that, okay, as I'm transitioning, this isn't the character moving across?
Every character has a physicality, every character has an emotion. Do it hard, switch hard. What I mean by that is like,
Mm,
you want to make sure that the characters that you're playing are vastly different from each other. You should be able to tell the difference between each character when you close your eyes and you hear those characters speak. You should be able to hear the emotion. You know, one character might be here, you know, and another character's down here. You know, like you've got to have that, like, know who is where, know the emotion and switch into it so that the audience and you know what character you're playing right now. Every character should be vastly different, you know, so that you can make those changes. And those changes can be subtle. I mean, you can have twins in a scene. I've never done that, so I have no idea where I'm going right now
yeah,
with this.
yeah.
My point is,
Don't
you can
worry,
have
don't
twins,
worry.
but make them somewhat different. You know, give them something. They can be that close to each other. Sure, they look the same and sound the same, but there's something that one has the other doesn't. Possibly, I don't know. But that's what I would say is give yourself a strong emotion. Always crank up the emotion. Always crank up the physicality of the characters, so that you know.
Okay, so just remind me, you probably did say, do you have a specific name to your solo show? What is the name of the show?
The show is called Ant Farm.
Okay, and why is it called Ant Farm, just out of interest?
I called it Ant Farm. It was actually one of my cast members, Rebecca, helped me with the name. But the idea is, so my name is Anthony,
Oh,
and
yeah, I start to see that
so
now.
Ant
Yeah.
Farm is like there's a bunch of different Anthonys on the farm. It's kind of like the idea, but
Ah,
it's just
yes.
Ant Farm. Uh,
No, that's
yeah.
cool. And do you have any specific plans or aspirations for where will it be in 5 years' time, say?
Well, for me, I would love to. I would love to do. I would love to travel. I'd love to bring the show to other places. I'm really happy doing it. I just want to do it more, and wherever that is, I'm happy to do it. You know, there's the Delray Beach Library, and I'm thinking about reaching out to them and seeing if I can do my show there. Or you know, there's other theaters around, and just reaching out to them. Traveling, I'm actually going up to Orlando. I'm doing a workshop up there at Dragonfly Studios. I'm teaching my solo musical. I teach a solo musical workshop, so I teach people how to do this. and then I'm going to also do a solo set up there. So just traveling around, showing it to as many people as I can, as many improv groups as I can, and just trying to keep it sharp for me, because it's not. I haven't done it in like 2 months. I haven't done my show, and it feels like a lifetime. But the holidays and transitioning, closing a theater, it's all these things. But like I feel like is it gone? I'm always like wondering. And what's nice about solo improv is you can do it anywhere. I did it in the car for a long time, but that's the secret: is just do it and get a coach. I got a coach, Jeff Quintana from Miami, who's a brilliant improviser and an even more brilliant coach. He watched me and he helped me with a lot of my set and in the way that I structured the form.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a structure to the set. Like any form, you do what you can, you try to keep it as long as you can, and then you go with what's happening. But he helped me build the form, and so you always want to have a coach. I would say try and get someone to come and watch you. But the hardest thing is going to be practicing by yourself. That is super hard to do. I did it in the car, a lot of cab driver, Uber driver scenes, but also some other really fun scenes, and that I even think about. That I'm like, wow, that was a really great scene. I wish I had done that for an audience.
Yeah, no, that's a really interesting thing. You can. There's like I do a lot. I do more short form currently than long form, but I've done lots of long form. But just like the show that I currently run, the Extreme Improv show, is a spin on a short form show, and it's amazing how when you say like you can do things on your own, even with short form games. And I suppose in a sense this is I'm probably unwittingly doing an aspect of playing multiple characters, as you may sometimes have to in your solo show, where I do run through things in my own head, and they might be, as I've done it in cars, I've done it on buses, where I will just try to work out, okay, what is the structure of a game or something, and I will voice both characters to myself.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're absolutely doing it. Yeah, and to say this about short form. So short form is the last thing I will teach a student. I feel short form is the hardest thing to teach. It's the most complex. There's so many moving parts. I wrote a half booklet because there's a million improv short form games, but I wrote like a booklet with a bunch of games, and I wrote how to call it, how to and the mechanics of short form are very difficult, especially if you're a new improviser. To start with short form, I was like, this is hard to do, because if you can play it and that's fine, and you'll like it and that's fine, but if you're looking to play it for an audience, you've got to know the inner workings, you got to know what the games are and how to hit them, and that's complicated. So the fact that you do short form every day is a testament to your skill as an improviser. It's what the audience likes the most. I would say it is the most difficult, while it might not be the most enriching, I think, because we're always going for the laugh in a sense. With short form, we're always being bigger and louder. Our premises are very like hit over the head. Oh, Kevin, welcome to the fish market. So glad you could come in on a Sunday. With long form, we get to take our sweet time, and we get this much more rewarding. And sometimes it's not even funny with long form.
Very true.
Sometimes it's you don't get to hit the hard. You don't get to dive into any serious topics. And I'm not just talking like politics or anything, but I mean like a son's father's dying of cancer, and he's in the basement trying to work on a model airplane. While his roommate or his best friend is trying to get him to go get beers or something. You know what I mean? Like, we don't get to have those arcs or those topics or like those elements in our improv scene. Our short form, right?
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
Hey, how's your dad's treatment going? New choice. It's like, well, I know that's an extreme example.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's very, very true. With long form, you do get to establish details on characters. You get to develop a character. It's interesting just because I do a podcast, a different podcast. This is like the interview based one. I do another one where I talk about specific improv skills. And the episode which I put up yesterday, just to plug my own show,
Yes.
was specifically on the idea of developing a character. And when I started the podcast, I wasn't specifically saying about whether it was short form or long form, but partway through I said, do you know what, everything I'm saying, it probably applies more to long form, just because in short form most of what I was saying is you have to put it out there instantly. You don't have time to create that nuance that you can with a long form based storyline, with a long form character, with relationships.
Right. Yeah, it's a lot faster. I think you can instantaneously, for me, the start of a long form scene and the start of a short form scene in terms of creating a character for me is the same. I make those choices right at the top. I'm a big fan of Mick Napier and his approach, which is give yourself something right at the top. Give yourself that physicality. Start right away. And then once you've started, you can check back. You can check in and say, okay, what have I done so far? But start right away with those choices right at the top, so that we can move forward. But I agree with you on that. When it comes to the nuance side of things, yeah, short form is just this loud, ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, there's no. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like it's not that, because when I get on stage and do it, I'm doing it for laughs. I'm going for the, trying to. We're just playing the game. We're just playing the games that are out there.
Absolutely, and a short form audience, that's what they expect.
Yeah,
you don't need to make it a difficult job for yourself by trying to give the audience something they're not expecting and hope that they'll understand somewhere along the way. People who go to a short form show, they obviously, everyone will know Whose Lines It Anyway, and they kind of expect that, and you want people to go, you want your audience to be happy, so it's easy to give them what they want. So Anthony, I will begin to wrap this up. Time has absolutely flown by on this, but I wanted to give you the opportunity. Is there anything else that you'd like to ask me, or is there anything you'd like us to have touched on today that we actually haven't got to?
Oh man, I mean, well, I'd love to know more about improv in the UK, and just experience more of that. Is there a place that I can? Do you have like a YouTube channel I can check out, or?
Do you know what?
Ticket want to mail me?
I can send you stuff to just throw in the plug, since you brought up the YouTube channel. This is like an audio podcast, but all of the audio podcasts end up on our YouTube channel as well. So there's the Extreme Improv channel, which is something we're really pushing more, that we've only just got going as a dedicated channel in the last couple of months. So there's lots of clips of our shows, there's lots of our podcasts, there's some other related videos that we've got on there. But by all means, there's so many UK-based companies that do great stuff. When you talk about like things like Whose Lines It Anyway, the origin of Whose Lines It Anyway for like the US version comes from actually it was a British show first.
Yeah.
And there's the Comedy Store Players, who are like the absolute masters of short form, and a lot of the Whose Line people came from there or have gone through there. There's the improvised musical, which quite possibly, yeah, there has been books, at least one or two come out of that. There's Showstoppers.
I think Tom Selinsky and Deborah Francis White.
Do you know what? I don't know if that's related to the Comedy Store Players, but
no,
I don't think so. I might be wrong. Someone correct me. Put in some comments somewhere. Educate me on this. But yeah, there's the Showstoppers, the improvised musical, which is probably the biggest improvised musical, in the United Kingdom, and I know that they then have shows that go elsewhere and things. Like for my company, Extreme Improv, it's something which I've had my improv company for 10 years, but it was something that 10 years ago was just me coming out of drama school, trying to create something small because I wanted to do improv, then whilst life and other career opportunities and other acting pursuits were coming up and down, it was something I always came back to. But it's only really in the last 3 years where it's been like, right, so let's take this seriously, let's develop this show, let's develop this audience, and so on and so forth. So, I'd like to think, I'll be humble enough to say that, Extreme Improv probably isn't going to be on everyone's radar as a big player, but I'd like it to be something where people can look to the body of work and the things that we create and try to innovate. And part of that is even these podcasts, because I absolutely love just connecting with different people across the world. In the last 3 years, I've been to however many festivals. I've been to the United States 3 times for festivals. I've been to various places in Europe, and it's like I love just connecting and finding the different communities and the different improvisers and directors and teachers such as yourself, Anthony. And I think that's one of the greatest things that comes out of improv, is that wherever you go, you can find people that have got this in common and got this similar interest or passion or love. And even when you find people that do things slightly different, they're still connected, and this sense of community is probably the greatest thing about improv for me.
Wow, yeah, I agree completely. And like you said, it's all about the love. We try to do our best to keep the communities happy and no drama. I always like cross promotion with other teachers from other schools. I always promote their classes. If they've got classes, let the students know, because the community ultimately gets better the more of us there are holding this thing up. So I appreciate you having me on and doing this podcast. I'll certainly share it with all of my people here so they know that there's improv in the UK and we can go there and do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And likewise, I'd love to have you back on the show, because I feel like even though it's now approaching an hour that we've been chatting, I feel like we're still kind of scratching the surface of stuff.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We didn't even get into all the I don't know. There's a million things.
Yeah. Okay, so I will begin to wrap this up. But do you want to tell people where we can find you, if you've got like your theatre or yourself personally, social media or websites and things like this?
Well, what I would say is the most beneficial info for improvisers is going to come off our website. So if you go to the-improv-u.com, the improv and then the letter U like university.com, if you search for our podcasts, I have about 24 episodes on there right now. It's just answering different things like, should improvisers get paid or something like that. I also have on our YouTube channel, which is also, if you just search improv and the letter U, we have a big golden U as our logo. You go there, you can see me doing Ant Farm. Ant Farm is 2 words. You can see me doing that. You can watch the solo show. I have one episode on there that I did or one set I did at the Countdown Improv Festival. And then also on there I have Simple Improv, which is some fun tips for people. So our YouTube channel and our website are going to have some really fun little pieces of information to help people get better. Also, and then at Yes and You, Yes and the letter U is our Instagram if people want to see fun pictures.
Brilliant. I will find and follow you on all of these things, Anthony. But thank you very much. This has been lovely talking to you. It's been an absolute pleasure. It's a very interesting person with lots of interesting insights into the world of improv and the things you do. I wish you well with your shows, getting back into the solo ones. If anyone wants to follow Extreme Improv, we're at Extreme Improv on Instagram, Twitter, social medias, all over the place. TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, the lot. Our website is www.extremeimprov.co.uk. This has been the Extreme Improv podcast. This is the chat show edition of the show, but we also have the comedy edition where we play short form games, which is the Radio Rumble show, and also we have the skill show where we discuss various improv skills. So until next time, thank you very much, and thank you for our guest Anthony today, and see you next time.